Welcome, everybody. This is Andrew Ross coming to you live from Indiana State University in Terre Haute, Indiana, right down the street from Indianapolis. Coincidentally, our guest speaker today probably has spent a lot of time in Indianapolis in his career. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'd like to open it and welcome everybody because this is the first time you're probably seeing this event from not my house, and we're actually out, and that means that we're having NYFA events again, which is very exciting. I believe Region 8, which is why I'm in Indiana State, is the first region to have their competition this year, and it's been exciting. It's been wonderful to see everybody again. Of course, the hangars are a lot, the tables are a lot further apart, but it's definitely a great change from what we've experienced over the last year. So we're happy to bring it back. Region 8 was happy to kick off our regional competition series. And with that note, since this is going to be the first time we're kind of doing this with more people now being able to view, we do again remind you we have the YouTube channel that this is being broadcast to. If you have the channel up, you'll notice there's a little chat function on the left, right, bottom of the screen, depending on what device you're using. Please submit the respectful questions and any interest or any expansion on any of the remarks that are given today that you wish from our guest speaker. With that note, our guest speaker that's joining us today, this is certainly not his first interview. It won't be his last interview, but the special moment for me on this interview is the two biggest organizations personally for me that I've been involved with in my career thus far, the National Intercollegiate Flying Association and the Airline Pilots Association. Personally, when I was at Envoy or American Eagle Airlines, then turned to Envoy, operating in various roles, including currently on the education committee. But these two groups have been very influential in my career, both on the volunteering side and as a member and user of both of these services. So, and ALPA as well has been a very large supporter of NYFA and is currently a very large supporter of NYFA. So we thank ALPA very much. And on that note, the 11th president of the Airline Pilots Association, currently the largest pilot union in the world, Captain Joe DePete. Captain DePete, thank you for joining us today. And I understand you have a few remarks prepared for us, so I'll go ahead and cede the floor to you.
I do, Andrew. Thank you very much for that very kind invitation. I wish I was there in person. Obviously, this video and virtual stuff's getting pretty old now, but we're doing all we can to make that happen as soon as we can. And so I am actually from the home office as well, down here in Louisville, Kentucky. So I'm not very far from Indiana. It'd be an hour and a half ride probably or something like that. But anyway, I am really pleased to be here today. So let me begin by telling you a little bit about ALPA and what you might not know. Like Andrew just said, we're the largest pilots union in the world. But what you might not know is we also operate the largest non-governmental aviation safety organization as well, consisting of divisions of safety, security, pilot assistance, jump seats, pilot peer support. Every aspect of a pilot's job in terms of what we do, every day of our lives when we fly, is all handled in that. And it is a part of ALPA, I think, that defines us and makes us different than other unions that might be only solely interested, say, in collective bargaining or the industrial side, as we refer to it. And we keep a firewall between what we do in safety. Our motto is schedule with safety. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. And also, we've been around for a while. So we are celebrating our 90th anniversary just this year. And as you can see, that's back since 1931. As you could tell from my hair, my gray hair, that I was one of the founding pilots. No, I'm only kidding. But I don't know. Hopefully the resolution isn't too great. But as you likely already realized from your study, airline pilots, we learn from experience, right? So we've got 90 years of experience. I know at FedEx in the sim, I was an instructor as well. Experiential learning was what it was all about, right? It's one thing to read something. It's another thing to actually do it. And once you do it, it gets ingrained. But for over 90 years, we've recognized the importance of union representation. Now, why do I say that? Well, the union movement is, first of all, of course, founded on, and I really truly believe in this, the dignity of work and reinforcing worker rights. When you meet somebody for the very first time, typically they ask you a question, and it's usually not what you did on vacation. it's typically, what do you do? And because what you do really truly defines who you are, not only to the world, but to yourself. And, it's a source of self-esteem. And I got to tell you, looking back on my career, I was really, really lucky. It's been an incredible career. And to end up in this position now, to finish it out, is just more than I could have ever dreamed. But in those early days of flying, since we're talking about since 1931, I don't know if you know, but half of our founding member pilots perished. All right. It was pretty tough back then. ALPA members turned to union contracts to gain a voice in their future. And then and now, a collectively bargain agreement allowed us to bargain for wages, work rules, benefits, career progression, if they want it. Some people prefer to have a different balance in their career progression based on, scheduling priority due to seniority. And then retirement security. But again, our primary motto, Schedule with Safety, is we want to make sure you get to retirement. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second, right? So, as I alluded just now, that, airline pilots back then took enormous safety risks every time they went to work. And they realized very quickly that there was no future in that, right? And especially with the growth that they were starting to see. So the answer was collective bargaining, right? Pilots had very little protection when raising safety issues back then, too. I mean, who would you go to? Certainly the chief pilot didn't really care. There was a lot of what we call pilot pushing going on back then. So, and it, in many cases, it cost them their lives. So, but fast forward today, and now we have a highly unionized pilot workforce that has charted the course for air transportation to become extraordinarily safe in the United States and Canada. I don't know if you know, but when you consider the form of transportation, and I'll tell you why here in a second, but we're putting people in, metal composite tubes and flying them in the lower stratosphere. And it is the safest form of transportation in human history. This is aviation we're talking about, not cars, not railroads, which have horrible records. We have an incredible proud record. Since the Colgan accident back a while back in mid 2009, I think it was, not one fatality. Okay, in the passenger side. I'll get into some of that as well. But also, I don't know if you know, but the union world is divided up in two groups in the United States. One is there's the National Labor Relations Act that governs other types of unions, but aviation related unions are under the National Labor Relations Act and covered by the Railway Labor Act, right? Okay, the NLRB, like I said, and the National Labor Relations Act, that's separate, right? So, and we have a union density of over 90%. Over 90%. They're down around, at one time they had 35%, but it was down to probably around 7 now, although it's on an increase. There is an increase underway right now. So why was it always, you have to ask the question, what was different about aviation? Well, it's the nature of your job. You signed for the aircraft. You have the regulatory responsibility, professional duty to get passenger and cargo safely from point A to point B. And, I want you to know that the Airline Pilots Association represents you and your professional career exclusively. There are no conflicting interests in this case. We are entirely your professional career insurance, I guess is the way you could look at it, to keep you happy, healthy, compensated, commensurate with your contributions, and making it to retirement. So again, about the whys of what we do, one of the, and this is the most important thing, because I keep going back to safety, as you notice. One of the most significant reasons is the risk-based, data-driven safety culture that pilots and ALPA help create to put into practice in the United States and Canada that caused a shift from a forensic approach to looking at accident investigations where you had to actually wait for something to happen and try to figure out why it happened, to a risk predictive model right now. And that's why we have that safety record. So we help build that. So, when you look at just look at it in that terms, it is why it's so important for our union agreements, because much of what I'm talking about in terms of those safety action reports are integrated into our collective bargaining agreements. Okay. So for instance, you've probably all heard of ASAP, right? The Aviation Safety Action Program, and the Flight Ops Quality Assurance Program, FOQA. These play a central role in the safety management systems and a risk predictive safety culture that ALPA pilots have cultivated at our airlines. Now, it's not just those reports, okay? There are over 150 data streams that go into there. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the nonprofit MITRE, but they crunch those numbers, use a bunch of algorithms, and are able to have a risk predictive thing. And in fact, because there are so few accidents now because of the work that we've done with these reports, those sole source, we call them, in other words, they would only be known to you. That information that would only be known to you is extremely important, because now we can pick up some of the bottlenecks or problems very early on. And the key is, they wouldn't succeed without support from labor, management, our regulator, the FAA, and the creation of a non-punitive workplace environment that allows workers to voluntarily report safety issues without fear of retribution. And so because some people ask that question, well, what happens if I report these things? Nothing actually would happen, because it's the information, as long as it wasn't negligent, right, or purposeful, the information is critical to keeping the safety record where it is. So, as union members, ALPAs, we participate as partners in collaborative safety data collection efforts, and they're codified, like I said, in our agreements with our airlines and often with our regulators as well. And as members of the FAA's Drone Advisory Committee, I'm a member of the Drone Advisory Committee, I'm a member of the Next Gen Advisory Committee, and I'm about to be appointed to the Commercial Space Transportation Advisory Committee. We're working there as well. In fact, ALPA was instrumental in starting a risk predictive safety culture subcommittee within the Drone Advisory Committee. So as drones become more and more prolific, they will be, hopefully, we'll keep them focused through the lens of safety. So similarly, we believe a risk predictive approach that it is based on a strong safety culture is necessary in those other areas I talked to you about as well. Commercial space, for instance, right? To work into a more integrated, shared national airspace where everybody operates at the same levels of safety. Right now, traditional aviation operates at about a 10 to the minus 9. Everybody cross their eyes, right? 1 billionth of a chance of a problem, of a fatality. Commercial space at the moment, 10 to the minus 6 at the best. Okay, so that's why they have to close off large swaths of airspace every time you see a rocket launch. And it's impacting all the other users of the airspace. But I just want you to know the Airline Pilots Association is integrated into that dialogue. And we're doing a lot of really positive work to really make that and move us into the future. So here's a big one for me too. I wanted to talk about this a little bit. We're equally committed to advancing the dignity of work to foster a more diverse and inclusive pilot workforce. I'm the first president in the history of the Airline Pilots Association to create a President's Committee for Diversity and Inclusion. And it has been, out of all the things I've been able to do, the feedback that I got from that was the most gratifying, I have to say, because it's about people, right? At the same time, we're trying to make sure that anybody who wants to become a pilot knows that it's accessible and it's a welcoming profession, but maintain the support for our first officer qualification, training, and experience requirements that have made flying so safe in the United States. In other words, not lower standards in any way, maintain them or raise them. And so we're working to find new ways to ensure that the piloting profession attracts individuals irrespective of race, gender, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, other diversity traits. My wife is a pilot. My daughter is a pilot. I understand the unique challenges that they face. And also just, it's just, we're all different, right? And I'm just happy to see, though, we have kind of right now, when I saw the numbers of only 5% women in aviation, and even less for, these other classifications I mentioned. But it just doesn't make sense. And I think very early on, the Airline Pilots Association, we have a professional development group that consists of education, leadership, and membership. And as you know, this is being hosted by our education group. They are leaving no stone unturned, let's just say, to get the word out. And not only are we visiting a lot of colleges and universities, we're going to the high school and the grammar school level now, because we know brain development very early on, opening up the vistas of possibilities for young kids is a great way to go. No one should feel that, they aren't capable of doing it. And I even noticed, we even know, certain teachers, if they're not too situation aware, might ask a question one way to a male student versus female student, things like that. So we all know that stuff now. So we're moving forward and to a diverse future. So, and where no one is more committed. I have to say this right off the bat, because, I always get questions about pilot supply, but no one is more committed to ensuring that we have a robust pipeline of highly qualified pilots and a diversity inclusion workforce at ALPA. I mean, we've been doing this for so long. It's rote now. Recently, we even laid out a policy plan to help ensure that individuals and that our profession is accessible to all injured, but we're recommending including aligning federal funding support for the education required to become an airline pilot with that of other highly skilled professionals. It's not easy. It's not cheap, right? As you know, flight instruction is expensive stuff and it's worth every penny, but it's not easy. And we're trying to help all students access the help that they need to realize their dreams. And we believe that union representation and agreements to protect pilots and enhance safety also contribute to a strong career to attract new aviators. Why would you want to get into a profession that wasn't so, right? I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense. So 2 years ago, I got to tell you a story. I attended EAA AirVenture at Oshkosh. My bucket list, I believe it or not, with all my flying, and I've got 40 years of flying together with civilian, Marine Corps, and then in the airlines. I've never been to Oshkosh, and I finally got to do that as president. And I happened to meet a gentleman there who I was so excited about trying to get on a Ford Trimotor. It turns out he's an ex-ALPA pilot. And I said, oh, great. I said, I'm going to buy a ticket. I'm going to ride in the back. And he says, no, you're going to sit in the right seat. I said, oh, yeah, sign me up for that. So I got to fly that beautiful machine, thinking back with a great deal of respect for the pilots that had to fly that back in those days. It was a beast of an airplane. I'm sure you're all familiar with adverse yaw, but you fly that thing completely with your feet a lot. And but I was so excited. And when we landed for the very first time, I said, thank you very much and everything. He says, well, I don't have another co-pilot. He said, so we did this 4 times. So it took 4 groups up, and it was a couple hours later, it was just really a dream come true. So you know how it is. You get in an airplane, everything changes, right? I mean, there's a process there. And I get goosebumps when I think about it, really. But what I love about, I guess, Oshkosh is one thing, is that not only the reflection of how airline pilots share their love of flying, all pilots there really, but and that interconnectedness that we all feel regardless of where you are in your career, really, it doesn't really matter. It dawned on me that it's all about mentoring, really. And that's what I'm trying to do here for you. And I want you to know that I am here for you. You can call me anytime. We can get you the number. I wouldn't mind answering the telephone. I do it all the time. I make myself really accessible. But I want you to know that I think my best bit of advice along these lines of mentoring is to join an ACE club, right? We have quite a few of those, 13 universities now nationwide, always looking to start new ones. The education committee is constantly beating bushes to that, but it's really rewarding. And so I highly recommend that as well. We usually visit probably, a dozen or so universities to help bridge the gap, prepare collegiate aviators for the flight deck. If you want us to visit your school, please let us know, right? We will do it. If you want me to attend personally, I'll do it. I got invited to go to Embry-Riddle. I found out I was the first president to go. So I, packed my bags, went down there, had a great time with the students down there. Not only did we have such great discussions and I got a tour of the school and all, but we went out and had some fun, which is still legal, I believe. So we had some really good times though. And I'd love to do that. So to really get to do the one-on-one stuff, right? So we also try to assist in this. I told you about, I know it's not easy to, become a pilot, both from the challenging aspects of the training, but also the cost, right, which is there. But ALPA recently contributed, and this is the first time we've done this as well, but on $200,000 to nonprofit organizations that honored the legacy of 4 of our pilots who were among those who lost their lives after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And we also awarded a total of $10,000 to the Costas Civilis ALPA Educational Scholarship to 4 highly achieving collegiate aviators in the 2021 and 22 academic year. I don't know if anybody out there ever met Costas. We lost him and his wife in a horrible accident. They were married 2 days, and they died in a tragic accident. And that one hit me hard. He's just a wonderful person. And so I was really glad to see this type of scholarship established in his honor. So now, one of our great strengths at ALPA is that we create a space in which pilots with incredibly different backgrounds, and I mean, we have a lot of people, right, from GA to astronauts, that we're connected to the heart, really. I even get a little choked up when I talk about it, because I really do love aviation. It's just, it changed the world, It connected us in ways. I'm about to do a speech before our executive board. That's all our MEC chairman at our 38 airlines. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about what flight has brought to us as a world society, the connectivity that has happened there. And, but, it's through that connection and the passion for what we do. That's what makes it all happen. So, one of the things I got to tell you, you're going to have the best office seat with the greatest view. Your work is where you leave it. You get that satisfaction of when you land do that Cat 3 approach and you walk away from it and know you did it. That's a great feeling. Go on the layover now and relax. There's so many good things about the career, and I want to welcome you to it and help you in every way I can. And we'll do it. That's our job, right? Our job is to make sure that you have a career to come to, right? And that gets into that whole, the idea about pilot supply, which I'll gladly get into a little bit about what we're trying to do to make this a better career for you. I want to say this before, and I'll hand it back over. I know I've been talking long. I get very excited about this. I won't stop, so I'm going to have to tell you. All right. It is a tremendous time to become an airline pilot. I don't remember a time in history where it is better. Okay. Did I fucking say more better? There is not a time in history to where it's better. All right. Right. Before COVID hit, all right, there was airlines were seeing a great resurgence, right? They were really growing, and pilot supply was a big issue, right? We want to keep people coming through the pipeline. Of course, the pipeline was only so big. It had nothing to do with the numbers of pilots. It actually had to do with the size of the pipeline. But now when COVID hit, we went through a period of time that was pretty tough. Probably the worst in the history of the airline industry. And we came out of it, and we got upwards of $60-something billion worth of assistance specifically dedicated to workers, which has never happened in the history of aviation. After 9/11, there were 50 bankruptcies and $84 billion in givebacks, and we received $60-something billion to be ready. Because we're essential employees, right? We're essential employees. It's a critical piece of infrastructure to keep our country functioning during COVID, and now, right, springboarding to this new recovery. But remember, a lot of pilots took early outs, right? So that's going to even create more opportunity right now. Many pilots were given severance packages and they left. Well, that's opportunity for you. So it's welcoming. It's the best job in the world. And each day, the Airline Pilots Association is doing everything that we can to make it inspiring and accessible for tomorrow's aviators. And I guess, Andrew, I'll cut it there and get into questions if you want, and we'll go from there.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Captain DePete. I've got a lot of ways I want to go with it. But first thing, I think maybe you kind of touched a little bit on your history, just to provide a little bit of base and some context. How did you get to become the 11th president of ALPA? From as long or short as you'd like to talk about that, what was your path here and where do you currently work?
Yeah, I'm surprised too. Quite surprised too. Well, it all began, I actually got out of the Marine Corps and I got hired by American Airlines, believe it or not. And I got hired right away to American, but I was always fascinated in what FedEx was trying to do, right? So I was interested in aviation even as a kid, right? The great thing is when I started to think about the Marine Corps, they had an aviation. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and Italian kid from New York. I'm going to be a lawyer. That's what we do, right? You go to St. John's University, you go to law school. So I went in one day, and I was in the regular student lounge, and I saw this Marine there, pair of golden wings, and I asked him the question. I said, "Hey, do you have a law program?" And he says, "We do." He said, "But would you be interested in flying?" And I said, "Do I have to have like a rocket science degree or something like that?" I said, "I'm poli-sci. I'm a political science major," which, by the way, paid off. But he said, no, come on out. And, do you have a significant other? Yeah, bring her along. So I brought my girlfriend along with me and we went flying. And he said, and of course they hung the carrot out there. They were giving away 25 free hours, a leather jacket and sunglasses. I was sold. I now had a purpose in life, right? Didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do other than the law thing, which I was very interested in. And I never looked back. And it was just amazing. And then when I got in the airlines, when I went to FedEx, I knew there was going to be a merger. And that really woke me up that, I think we need representation here at FedEx. And so I was part of the organizing effort there. I ended up being the second officer rep, the first officer rep, the captain rep, a council chairman, the MEC chairman, first one actually. And then I took a big hiatus, and I was asked later on, I did a lot of finance stuff, and I was asked later on if I wanted to be an executive vice president. As you know, Andrew, is part of the executive council where we have 9 executive vice presidents and we have 4 national officers. And it's all we're fiduciaries for the association. We watch every penny. And it's great. It's a great system because we take regular line pilots, bring them in to show them how the money's being spent, right? And that really was an eye opener. And then I was asked to consider to run for first vice president, which I did as a cargo guy, first time ever. And then after that, a few people said to me, "Hey, are you thinking about president?" And I said, "Yeah, I would love to continue on." But I heard a lot of people say, "Oh, having the cargo guy," right? Because it's a smaller group. Not so much anymore, though. I got a lot of new cargo airlines on. But you know what? I want to tell you something. Here's what all the pilots need to know out there. We're not passenger versus cargo. This was my mantra when I was getting elected. It is. We are not passenger versus cargo. We're not mainline or regional. We're not the United States or Canada. And for your listeners, we have 14 airlines up in Canada. We're ALPA pilots first and foremost, right? Doesn't really matter what it's all cargo in the back, right? Some of the cargo is more demanding than others, but it is. And so it was a remarkable win, really. And I was shocked. I was really shocked that the message that I was put out there was that everybody's voice, from the smallest to the largest carrier, meant a lot to me. That without those two bookends, all is lost. And that message really resonated. So long answer. Sorry.
Oh, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. So we talked about pilot supply, and you gave a great answer about the pipeline and everything. And I've got a couple of questions to that, but first and foremost, before I get into that question or those questions, you had talked about the scholarship money given out this year, and the additional as well as the scholarship money. And ALPA, and this was part of the ALPA and NYFA connection, is that you have all been a very long supporter of NYFA and specifically the regional top pilots. Yeah. And how they, when we were hosting these competitions, and now that we're back finally again this year, you'll be able to add more to that, and you're again providing a bigger impact directly to college students. So thank you on behalf of NYFA to ALPA for that additional way that you're supporting us as well. Yeah. So now we'll get into, because we talked a little bit, you just mentioned about the diversity and making sure, and then that kind of led into the pipeline discussion that you had talked about. So you mentioned that ALPA had recommendations to the government to help aviation education specifically become more accessible to underrepresented communities. Can you also kind of talk a little bit more and expand on what ALPA is doing to reach and inspire young people? You'd even mentioned we're kind of starting to go into we had focused on college, then high school, and now we're all the way down into elementary school and middle school. So can you kind of talk maybe more specifically about what ALPA is doing there?
Absolutely. So, obviously, as you know, the education committee doing a tremendous job, right? I mean, before COVID hit, we had a pretty aggressive plan in place to begin to go not only to the universities, but to go to, like I said, the high schools and grammar schools and, the grade schools. And that's continuing. Now as we hopefully exit this crisis very soon, I hope, as vaccination rates increase and hopefully, herd immunity begins to take hold. But we're also doing things, to affect how you can, help students do this. And, I myself, I go on the Hill quite often, right? Obviously, through our political action committee, we're always going out there and advocating to keep a healthy flow of people coming into the pipeline. And it is important. It is really important. It's not only important from a fairness standpoint, but it is an untapped area, right? And we, obviously culture changes and shifts a little bit. And, it doesn't take, super big muscles to fly the airplane or anything like that. So it's an equal opportunity environment right now. And I'm really excited about it. It also helps us too in a lot of other ways too. There's a lot of people who would push back and want to see standards lowered, right? And they use a lot of excuses to do that. And we know that the FOQ rules were written in blood, right? A series of 4 fatal, really horrible accidents. The last one culminating with Colgan, February 12th, 2009. And, we learned that there were a lot of things we needed to do, right? We had that was the beginning of that data collection effort I told you about. But we also needed to look at ourselves a little bit in terms of the training. And so we knew fatigue was going to be a big issue as well, right? We found out about fatigue issues, and we ended up having the FAA reauthorization in 2010. I think that was the best one we ever had, which instituted the new fatigue rules, which cargo was carved out of, which sore spot, but still working on that. But everything we are is about keeping that pipeline open and providing the resources to do it. And so we've made some significant movement. We're always moving the ball downfield on this one. Because it is the future. It's the future. I don't want to say that corny thing, kids are our future, but they are. They really are. We're preparing the next generation for a career in aviation. And now with all the automation and everything that's going on, right? The changes that we've seen. I remember flying, completely round dials. I was going across the ocean back in the Marine Corps days with a navigator. Okay. That's how old I am. I used to love when I got the news. Captain, I got some news for you. We may be a little off course, Okay. When you're heading for an island in the middle of the Pacific, it's not cool. So, but no, really big issue on us. And we visit, I think I think if memory serves, 21,600 grade school students at 145 schools that we visited. So I want to get more personally involved in it, though, because I think, like I said, that Embry-Riddle visit was fantastic. I'll never forget it. I still get emails of people telling me how their career is going. And, how's this resume look? So.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That's good to hear. The one of the interesting comments that keeps kind of resonating is you have a very interesting and diverse background. But one of the things you mentioned is how your path drew you to become president was you started as a rep, right? You were elected for the second officer rep position, and I think a lot of people tend to believe, especially when they first start learning about union work, that that's pretty much the only thing out there, right? That you're going to become a representative and you're going to go out and do that. And obviously you had been running the air safety side of it. So I feel like you'd be a great person to kind of give some insight about how somebody at an airline could get involved in union work instead of just kind of the standard path that I think a lot of us did take to start.
No, I think that is a really good question, because there's two ways. I think everybody really too should have an opportunity to serve in your union. It's a life-changing thing. It's not always a positive experience. It can be very trying and challenging, right? I mean, that's the name of the game. You're getting in the arena. One of my favorite speeches is the man, I try to not genderize it, but being in an arena and getting in the fight, right? But there's two ways to do it. One is through elected office, as you indicated, and the other is through volunteering on some of the committees. And really, they are the meat and potatoes of what gets done at the Airline Pilots Association. And it literally changed my perception. I thought I knew a lot about the association until I started working with the Air Safety Organization. Safety, right? You not only have a council construct where there's representatives from all our airlines, all our 38 airlines, the Central Air Safety Committee chairman responsible for the safety at their properties, reporting to each other. So it enables me to put my finger on the pulse of what's happening and hearing it both ways, right? A two-way conduit. But aircraft design and operations, air traffic services, accident analysis and prevention in aircraft accidents, energy and the environment, right? Human factors and training, big issue. Security, same thing, a bunch of SMEs there, council structure as well with all the representatives. Jump seats, right? Big issue with jump seats. That's access and PIC authority. That's access to our cockpits. We have a fantastic new app, as you know, or function in our app that allows our pilots to make jump seat reservations right through the app, which is kind of cool. Everybody jump seats. And then pilot assistants. Now, these people, I really have to, they're all great, but they have to fly under the radar. So they don't get, because typically if you need pilot assistance in your life, something not good is happening, right? So it's aeromedical. It's CIRP, critical incidents response. You bent metal, right? HIMSS, you have a substance abuse problem. Pro stands, you're having some interpersonal relationship issues, right? And then during my term, though, I was assigned after the Germanwings accident. I was assigned to the FAA's Pilot Fitness Aviation Rulemaking Committee. And we were recognized to having a very robust series of these, these pilot assistance programs. But what I saw was missing. Those were all work-related issue things that they address, aeromedicals, CIRP, HIMSS, and ProStance. But and I know that if there are problems at home and your head's not in the game, right? There wasn't an avenue. So I created this pilot peer support program. And a lot of the individual airlines, the big ones like Delta, had begun a program similar to that. United started one, FedEx started one, but there was a lot of small carriers that didn't have the resources to do it. So I created what I wanted to see was a nationwide program, right? Where some of those reps even help and volunteer. But you pick up the phone, you dial the 800 number, right? And you're put through to a trained pilot peer support. And I mean, this is the only course that you go through that you actually get a test at the end of it. It's been reviewed by several previous flight surgeons. It's scientifically cited, everything that we do. And it isn't touchy-feely stuff. It's science about, helping people through stressful events and being there for them and being able to get some help for them. Like, sometimes it's just a matter of picking up, talking to them, hearing their problem and say, oh, we know what you could do with there. We'll call the chief pilot and we'll get this taken care of. Or, pilots are always worried about three things if they're in a stress event. What will the FAA think? What will the company think? And the big one, will I get paid? Okay. Because what you don't want to have is a problem and make it even worse now because you're not going to get paid. So this is all confidential. And the FAA loved it. They absolutely loved it because it was off their plate. And once again, the Airline Pilots Association and all these committees I'm talking about took the bull by the horns. We did it ourselves with our own money. So my hope is that that pilot peer support, and it's close to it, might go nationwide, just like HIMSS. HIMSS is available, across the nation. So we're hoping that happens as well.
That's fantastic. Obviously at no greater time was that needed than 2020. And and even in the subsequent fallout, as hard as it is as it was to shut everything down, it's been hard and stressful opening everything up, which actually is an interesting lead into this next question, which is the disruptive passenger incidents that have been on the rise. So, obviously it's all over the news. It's been happening with more frequency, and it appears to be a much greater threat. And when it happens, it's far more spectacular, I would say. So what's Alba doing with that threat, and what's your view on the solution for it?
Yeah, this is a really sad and serious predicament we find ourselves in. It seems like over the years, a lot of civility in society has waned. By the time people get on the airplane, they're usually pretty agitated sometimes. It's tough to go through security. There's a lot of anxiety out there. There's a lot of things happening. And, people are acting out sometimes. And you throw a little alcohol into that sometimes, and you never know what you're going to get. The problem is, the way I see it, from a profile standpoint, a risk profile, the threat vector, as we call it, right? It not only includes international acts of terrorism now, there's a domestic element here, right? And so I'm concerned. And so is, listen, I don't do anything without the backing of the board of directors, right? And through our strategic plan, I think your members should know that this is a grassroots effort to create the direction that we go in all those subject matter areas that I was just talking about. And it's actually codified in a strategic plan that we do every 2 years. Well, it's pretty clear what we needed to do, because we were afraid that in some of these disruptions that we're seeing, attacks on the cockpit are starting to happen, right? I mean, for whatever reason. And even a bad person could end up, creating a diversion and then having that opportunity when that door opens. So secondary barriers are something we've been fighting for forever. So that when the cockpit, they open the door, the flight crews, the flight attendants can put that, light mesh thing across the area. And right now, all they have is a cart and a human being standing in the way of somebody who wants to do something very bad. That's a dangerous place to put somebody. But here's the sad part. In 2018, we won. We got the law passed. And it's 2021, and the FAA still has not put out the rule. I don't understand how that happens, right? And I've been talking to Administrator Dixon and everybody down the line saying, the law came out in 2018. We already have the minimum operational performance standards worked through. We had airplanes at United that had in the 787 that had that really slick looking one that was built into the airplane. So we're pushing them to put out a final rule. And in the meantime, I'm supporting legislation as well that will not only include, which was in the law, that all newly manufactured aircraft have a secondary barrier, but that all existing aircraft, they get it as well, some kind of retrofit. So we're doing a lot, and we're trying to stay on, industry's been pushing back on this. It's money to them, right? But think about this. I'll finish with this. I'm sorry. We lost a lot of lives in 9/11. If that happens again, if we know what a breach of a cockpit looks like, and it isn't pretty, if it happened ever again, and we knew we could have prevented it, man, I don't know how people could live with themselves who might have been involved in pushing back on that, because that is not in respect for memory of 3,000 some odd people that lost their lives that day. And, funny thing, I'll finish with this. I'm sorry. If being right about an issue, this is what, here I'm going to my union box again. If being right about an issue was all that mattered to being successful, we'd be 100% successful all the time. We're always on the right side of the issue. We're always on the side of safety and security, right? So what's the difference? It's the push that's necessary, because, there are other competing interests that we need to push back against. And we do that with data. We usually win in time, incremental pressure.
That's interesting, and it's kind of a good opportunity. And then I think, because you mentioned you have a poli-sci degree, that was your track at one point. You've spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill, and it's probably a good idea, because one of the biggest, it's probably a good time to ask this or talk about it, is one of the biggest events in my mind, obviously, because I was in the middle of it in 2020, was the collective pushing on Capitol Hill to help with that. So, you mentioned $6 billion that was given to the industry to make sure it was essential. That's kind of one of those things that, maybe sitting in the schoolhouse at the time, you wouldn't understand what maybe that took in the background to make happen. And it was all of, it was probably one of the few times you see all of the labor groups talk together, you have all of the airline management groups agreeing with everybody. How did that look from your position going through it?
You asked that question.
I know it's probably a big question.
But. No, it is. It's a beautiful question. Since 2019, when I took office, I inherited a government shutdown. Do you have any idea what that means to the airline industry, right? A government shutdown. All that information that we were getting from those reports, nada, right? The safety action report. So from the safety side, we were super concerned. And then from the indignity of work side of the federal workers that were forced to go to work without pay, that's not good either. And so we supported them. And then right after that, we had the Boeing 737 MAX issue. How often do you see an aircraft get grounded, right? So my new team, incredible group of people, I might add, just like pilots, when, flashing lights go on in the cockpit, if it's not a V1 cut where it requires an immediate action, we wind the watch and we analyze, and we're data driven, right? But my team has consistently handled one emergency after another, really. So we had the government shutdown. Then we had the Boeing 737 MAX. Then we had a global pandemic. Right. Then we had January 6th, which kind of did raise some questions about what was going to happen to us in America. I used to say, so what's next? This is like biblical thing, is it like locust? Well, it turned out to be killer wasps. But but the point is, look, I feel like I've gotten the opportunity to serve at a time throughout this period of history, which was, like the worst downturn in the history we've ever seen. So what do we do? To answer your question, now to get to the meat of it, we knew we were essential workers, and we knew in today's world how critical aviation is to our nation's infrastructure, how it not only affects our nation, but also the world. So we had our cargo pilots flying into the belly of the beast, right, into the perfect storm at Wuhan, Guangzhou, bringing back ventilators, right? They called it the air bridge, right? Remember that? And we supported that. I was fighting to get some protective equipment for our pilots. They were going out there naked. They were getting sprayed with unknown things. They were put in health camps in China. Still going on, by the way, in some cases. We have made some improvements. We've contacted State Department together with DOT, and we've been fighting. We've been working through that whole issue. China and Hong Kong is a little tough, but and then. We made the argument that as essential workers, right, we had to keep this going. We had and you remember, nobody was flying. It was very little, but we were taking medical people to these outbreak hotspots, right? So we said, look, we're essential workers. We need to protect these workers. We need to keep these supply lines open, because think about how bad COVID would have been. There'd be nothing on the shelves if this happened. You think no Christmas presents, or holiday presents, no holiday presents. I heard somebody on CNBC said, well, boy, could you imagine if I couldn't do that for the kids? Well, hello, everything would have stopped if it wasn't for us. And we also reinforce the idea. Do you want to be ready for a recovery? Because we can't just flip a switch. Pilots have to have regular training, right? And recurrent currency requirements and all those kinds of things, right? So we got it. We joined forces with all of labor, and I've been very active in the AFL-CIO. If you go to the AFL-CIO websites, and specifically Transportation Trades, which represents the 33 transportation unions, you will see ALPA's topics of discussion all in it. They now understand us. And I'm trying to do the opposite too, of make sure our pilots understand them. But everybody who works, no matter what they do, right, are joined in that thing. And we were able to work together to get a tremendous amount of money. to keep us steady, and thankfully the people who decided to take the early outs helped sacrifice a little bit. And it was pretty amazing feat, really. There's been nothing like it in the history of aviation. Compared to 9/11, like I said, 50 bankruptcies, 50, $84 billion, people losing their retirement security, everything was gone. I don't want that to happen for future generations. I think we've made the point that aviation is pretty significant. And that's why I'm worried right now, because, as we are essential workers, not entitled workers, we're essential workers, right? And so we have to be careful with that and make sure, we signed up for this job. I don't want to get all Marine Corps on you because but it's a mission. It's a mission. We know what we're getting into. We know that this is not going to be easy, but it's my job to keep them safe, though. I want to make sure everybody's safe doing this job as much as possible. And I was a little frustrated with that early on, but we got everybody on the right page. So.
No, that's true. And I thank you personally, obviously. Thank you for your efforts. It was awesome to see from my house when I was not qualified to fly. It was an amazing, it felt great to see that type of unity that I had certainly never seen and the industry had never seen. So it's just ALPA was obviously pivotal in that leadership role in that. So,
you say that, like, I want to give a shout out to the representation department too, because not only were we doing all that stuff on the safety side, right, and on the government affairs side, but economic, financial analysis, representation, and legal. Over 150 letters of agreement had to be struck in a very short order of time. If you look back in the history of the Airline Pilots Association, if you saw 5 or 10 in a given, in a given year or two, you had a lot, right? It was all hands on deck 24/7, and it still is. So,
yeah, that's a great point. That thought, I see the LOAs that came through on just my airline, not let alone every other airline that was having to sign that. So that is absolutely true. 100%. They already the unsung heroes is the staff of ALPA as well. That, again, our membership probably doesn't realize is ALPA is not just solely made up of airline pilots, which it certainly is mostly driven by pilots, current pilots such as yourself, but there is a staff that works behind the scenes I wish we could highlight them somehow in this too, but
let's do that right now.
There we go. That's
no, I have to, because you bring up, that's it. And then my staff knows I never stop doing this, but it's the secret sauce of the Airline Pilots Association, that this connection between pilot leaders supported by a large group of professional staff members who do just an incredible job every single day. I thought I knew what it looked like, but from my perch now, Bertha's first vice president in this, I thought I knew as EVP. No, working with them, they are incredible people. They're extremely dedicated. And that's why too, during COVID, I kept them safe. I had to shut down the office. I had to make sure that, we kept everybody safe. And now we're doing it a week on, week off kind of thing, where we have half come in one weekend, only if, they feel safe to do so. But it's, I tell you, it really is quite a ride. So, but they're fantastic people. Thank you for mentioning that.
Absolutely. I got one more good question for you, and then we'll be probably at about our hour. And it's going to pivot away from a lot of what we talked about, but this is going to deal with William Shatner. And who doesn't want to end a conversation or discussion about, and not have to bring up William Shatner? So space flight, right? That's going to be the big thing. We've got airlines placing supersonic aircraft orders. We've got the next generation of aircraft that are being talked about right now. Once we get past truly on the other side of this pandemic, we've got the next series of airliners coming out. We got a lot of the future that we're looking at, airplanes that certainly this generation of pilot that's in school right now is going to be training into, or being captains of, or retiring off of, that are just starting to be built in CAD. And some of that is going to go to space, right? So what are the pilot's concerns and actions that should be taken to have the support safe integration of this? Because you mentioned this earlier about, a rocket launch, and how that's its own beast of shutting down airspace for miles. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that's going to fit in together and what we're doing?
You think, I don't know what the average age of the viewership is. Do you think they know who William Shatner is? I hope so. He's our old original Captain Kirk, right? Original Star Trek captain. But anyway, listen, you are touching on something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I started this towards the end of my first term my term as first vice president with the Air Safety. I went to a Commercial Space Transportation Advisory Committee meeting and I listened. And I realized as I listened that there was a big disconnect between what I had heard about traditional aviation and what the commercial space people were thinking. And so when I had an open mic, I said, anybody like to ask a question? You know me. I grabbed the mic and I explained how we've learned so much since 1931, this experiential learning, the data collection efforts that we're involved with. And I said, I think we could both benefit if we sat down and we looked at our commonalities and not our differences. Because here's the problem. Because we're not doing all we can at the moment, we're developing future technologies that I can get into, but one is called the Space Data Integrator, which is not complete yet. It is complete, but it's not being used in the way it should. Whenever there's a space launch, because of that difference between 10 to the minus 9 in safety and 10 to the minus 6, that huge, big difference, they have to close off a vast swath of airspace. Now, you would think they could dynamically manage that airspace a little bit better. We have ADS-B now, right? We're trying to get space-B. Well, it is around, but we'd like the U.S. to invest in that as well. Space-based ADS-B to manage the traffic. But they have to keep basically airplanes. So imagine, if you imagine in your minds I can't do a diagram here, but imagine the East Coast, right? And the flights that used to go from, like, say, Boston straight down to Florida or down to the islands, right? Pretty far offshore, over 50 miles offshore. Well, stick a big swath of blunt airspace in there. So now they got to either go way around, they either got to go way west and go around down the coast, or they got to go the other way. Increased fuel burn, carbon footprint, duty days, expenses for the airlines. They're not happy about this, okay? And it's not being paid for by commercial space, I got to tell you. So in my, I've been dealing with this for a while. So I said to both, I said, would you be interested in sitting down and have a dialogue? I said, sure. Now, I didn't even know if traditional aviation would even buy into this, but I went to them and said, you good with this? And they said, yeah. So we had a meeting. We all sat down. First, I had them separately, then we had them in one room because there was that much division there. And, we started to pick the low-hanging fruit, right? And figure out what we had in common, not what our differences were, solving problems, right? And then after that, we had a one-day conference where we invited in lawmakers. Senator Cruz, who's part of Space Council, came in. We had somebody from the Space Council. That's the Vice President of the United States runs the Space Council. We had somebody. It was a great day. We had the Commercial Space Federation there. It was really discussion was robust, right? And we became a trusted facilitator between the two. Because we're not always, completely interested in, we want our companies to be healthy, and we understand the problem, but I want a solution, right? So most recently, let me tell you what I did. I was on I had to testify before the House Transportation and Infrastructure Aviation Committee about this. And also I was asked to be the keynote speaker at the Aero Club in DC, which is a big group. It's all of aviation shows up at that. And I said, I have a question. I'm a member of the Next Gen Advisory Committee. I'm a member of the Drone Advisory Committee. And I've been working with the Commercial Space Transportation Committee. If we are trying to end the segregation of airspace, right, and fully integrate all the users, why are all these committees doing their work in a segregated way? Well, I got to tell you, there was a stop, right? I got more feedback from that one statement. And so now what we're doing is we're working together to try to, what you might see is an integration of all those committees towards what we pilots call the shared mental model, towards a shared mental model. So that, with limited resources, how could you do it any other way? You'll be able to make a mistake doing one thing and find out it's not going to work, right? And so I can go on. There's some incredible, I went to the people who do the number crunching for the data collection effort, that company MITRE I told you about. They have a model now called surface to space that is absolutely fascinating. It could be a test model for like all users of the airspace. They could change one thing and see how it would affect the model. So I'm so into this. I want to see this happen. I'm a believer in space flight. I really am. This is a future humanity. I mean, really what it is. And so we got to just do it safely. I tried to make that short. I know. I know it was
do great. Do great. All right. Well, we're at an hour. That was wonderful. There's a lot of great information, a wonderful viewpoint on that information. Do you have any closing remarks for us before I say goodbye to people?
I just want to say, all right, here's your clearance. Are you ready to copy? Okay. Every one of your folks out there is cleared to dream, which is the name of our website, right? And to have a fantastic career, right? On departure, contact me and the Airline Pilots Association and Squawk 1931, which is when we started, because that's the answer. I'm here for you. I will answer any question from anybody. If you have any questions career-wise, we have some fantastic people. My resource coordinator, Paul Ryder, who was a regional pilot. Now he's up at United, and he would be glad. I'm glad to put you in touch with him. We'll help you in every way we can. Once again, I really thank you all for having me here, and I look forward to seeing you in person. I'm only an hour and a half away if I'm on the weekends here in Louisville. So, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Captain DePete, and to everybody else this week, both in my own Region 8 here, and on behalf of all of NIFA, thank you very much for stopping by and talking to us, taking an hour on a Friday afternoon to speak with us, Captain DePete. For everybody else out in NIFA world, and especially everybody else that's just starting their regional competitions next week and the weeks leading up to this, good luck at your competitions. Enjoy. Again, this recording will be up on the website. If you have a friend or a competitor that missed it, please let them know that it'll be up. And thank you. I invite you all to enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.